have some of those articles of some various old department stores. I have them printed out so I can read them to you. And I just thought this would be a lot of fun. Even if it's a store that you've never heard of, you might learn a little bit about the history of some of these department stores. I remember going to Tallheimer's cost $6.5 million to construct the 300,000 square foot store, and it was the largest suburban department store on the East Coast at that time. On November 2nd, 1958, Maryland Governor Theodore R. McKeldin ceremonially opened the third suburban D.C. Hecht Company store at Prince George's Plaza St. Paul, Minnesota, rebranding the stores as Zayre Shoppers City